Hello, and welcome to SNAB Demola. In today's video, we are talking about a guide to SNAB Biology. So, it's not an exam board that a lot of people do, and definitely I think it leads to a lot of confusion about what is this exam board actually trying to assess, and how do we revise to approach that. So, today's video, I'm gonna kind of break down what SNAB Biology really is, or what they're trying to do with SNAB Biology, and then I'm gonna kind of go through how to approach questions, and maybe a bit about exam tips as well, just for on the day, as we're getting towards exams. So I know I got a question specifically asking about paper one, but I'm kind of going to group everything into one video just as I think it works better that way. So this is just an ultimate guide to SNAB Biology. Let's get straight into it. When we talk about SNAB, it's very different in the terms of it's way more application based compared to the other exam boards. So they typically don't just ask you about talking about a process. It will be in a scenario or in something that maybe is a bit unfamiliar to you, and then trying to get you to think about the biological idea and link it into that context. That's kind of the key with SNAB Biology. And you kind of get that when you look at the assessment objectives. So I'd always recommend going to the specification and have a look at these. You have AO1, AO2, and AO3. AO1 is a lot about demonstrated knowledge, stating things. These are kind of the easier 1-2 markers that you tend to get, whereas the vast majority of your marks are always going to come from AO2, which is why you need to apply knowledge. Like we said, it's a very much applied course in SNAB. So a lot of the marks that you're going to get is based on can you apply your knowledge into different scenarios, whether it's about data, whether it's about processes or anything like that. It's applying the data. And your AO3, definitely the tougher marks to get are going to be about analysis or about evaluating ideas, data, whatever. So knowing that breakdown is quite important in terms of kind of judging how do we go about revising for SNAB Biology. Because if you look at it, overall, the percentages for across the 3 papers, about 120 of the marks are on that AO2. So you're almost getting half the marks just for that. And then the other ones, 96 of those marks about, is going to be AO1, which you should be able to get. And finally, the harder ones are only about 80 marks. I say only, but about 80 marks. So you can see that that's the kind of split we're working with. AO1, you should be able to get. AO2, if you can really hone in those skills, you get to get your mark up so much, and you get more towards those grades that you'll be wanting to see on results day. The next thing that we want to talk about is when we see a question in front of us, how do we approach that? So I kind of look at it in 3 kind of stages. First of all, we need to find the context. So you've read the question, you're thinking, what are they asking me? So kind of suss it out in terms of they might not be using exact wordings, but is this an enzyme question? Is this a diffusion question? There are always going to be specific phrases or hint words that have been used that you'll need to spot to suss that out. Definitely doing past papers is going to help you to see those kind of words that are being used. After you've sussed it out, the next thing is when you read examiner reports, SNAB examiners hate knowledge dumping. Like, I think a lot of the time people see a biology question and are thinking, oh my goodness, there's so much in the mark scheme, I need to get down everything that I know about this topic. However, suss out what they want you to answer. Like, what do I mean? Command words that are in your specification. I hammer on about it all the time, but looking at those command words really helps you to kind of guide how you're going to answer the questions. Because if they say suggest, then you know that you're putting forward an idea. If they say something like evaluate, then if you've read it, you'll know the kind of steps that you need to take in an evaluation question. So make sure that you've done that, and then afterwards I'm going to be looking at how many marks are being awarded for this question, right? When I see that, I'm knowing, okay, if it's like 4 or 5 marks, I need to write a bit more. I'm going to probably talk about the cause. Then, when I've talked about that cause, let's link it to the biological process going on. Now, if that process is disrupted, what's the consequence? So if you're working in these 3 stages to help you, and definitely, like we said, mark schemes are horrible in biology. So make sure that you are using a lot of the terminology that you will need. There are always going to be those keywords that they love to see, like osmosis or whatever, but make sure that you're putting those words in. You will notice them if you keep doing questions. They'll always be in the mark scheme. Put them in your paper. But those are kind of the main things that I'm looking at when I have a question in SNAB Biology and I'm trying to answer it. Another thing that SNAB especially, but I believe just biology in general, highly rewards is the ability to interpret graphs. Like, they come up so much. So if you're really confident on how to look at a graph and know what's going on, fantastic. I always have this like acronym that I use to go through it. So I'm having like a really systematic approach at looking at the graph and making sure I'm extracting all of the information that the question wants me to say. So it's called chart C. So we start with a comparison, yeah? So you know you'll need to compare at the end of the day. Cool. The next one, highest or lowest. Looking at the highest values, lowest values, for example, if we have a bar chart, very important. Next thing is anomalies. Is there any result that doesn't fit the trends that we're talking about? Make a comment on that in the mark scheme. They love it. Next thing is rate of change. So just see how quickly are things changing. How quickly it just change. And then also trends. So overall, are we seeing an increase in one variable and an increase in another variable? Whatever you're seeing, make sure you're putting a comment on that. And then finally, they love to see a calculation as well, so add that on. But you see, that's a very systematic approach on how to approach data interpretation questions. As you use that, you'll see that your marks are going up and up because you're mentioning all of the things that the examiners like to see. Another thing is about practicals or investigations. Very, very common questions as well to come up. More in like your AO3 bracket, but if you can do these, and I don't think they are that hard to get the marks on, then fantastic. Whenever I have a practical question, especially one of the core practicals we've done, I'm thinking, get my variables down, number one. Equipment, maybe not an extensive list, but especially the important ones for the practical, I want to write that down. And then I'm going to remember, what did I do in class? Put it on the paper. At the end, validity, reliability is so important. Repeat, calculate a mean. Easy phase gets you a mark. Do a statistical test. Easy phase gets you a mark. So you're thinking about those kind of things, put them into your answers when you're doing the paper, and you will start to see you're picking up more marks in these types of questions. So that's another way that I'm thinking to approach A-level biology questions, especially in SNAB. So really, if we're thinking about SNAB biology or biology in general, how do I make sure that I'm getting my score up and up and up as I get closer to the exam? Well, number one, we need to get the content down. Everyone should be able to learn the content for A-level biology, but everyone should be able to get the content for A-level biology, yeah? It is hard, but everyone can do it. So you're thinking active recall is really, really good. In terms of processes, I always try to draw them out. If I can draw out the process and I know what's going on, then I'm like, I'm happy with this, yeah? And another thing as well for content knowledge, concept mapping, especially in SNAB, where they like to, it's like this buzzword they call synoptic thinking. And if you can do that, it's kind of like this method of linking different topics together. So like say you're talking about neurons, linking that to the structure of a membrane, etc., but they love it in SNAB. So make sure that you are able to link very easily through topics, and I find concept mapping is a great way of practicing that skill. The next thing is going to be mark schemes and exam papers. Literally, the thing is with biology is you need exposure. You do need exposure to it, especially in SNAB where a lot of them are contextual. You need to practice seeing a question and sussing out immediately, this is an enzyme question or this is a natural selection question. So doing parts of it is going to help you to get that skill. And then finally, what I would say as well, mark schemes, so important. In biology, I think more probably AQA, but in SNAB as well, you'll realize that a lot of the kind of ideas when you see this type of question, they repeat. So if you can sometimes literally just memorize in terms of what do they want me to say for this question in the mark scheme, if you can kind of have that idea before you get an exam day, fantastic, because then it becomes kind of natural because you know, okay, I have a natural selection question, I'm going to do da. Every single time I'm going to get the marks if I do that. So make sure that you are kind of thinking of those systems or getting into that flow as you keep doing your revision. Okay, so before I end the video, I actually really do want to give paper-specific advice. So I'm going to group 1 and 2 together because they're kind of the same thing, just with paper 1 is 5 and 6 and paper 2 is 7 and 8. And then paper 3 is obviously the more difficult one at the end. So in terms of paper 1 and 2, I would say don't forget your fundamentals. I've never really been a person that subscribes to the whole kind of high yield thing because I think if it's in the specification, you should probably just learn it. However, know the common things are common. So the things that you see in like every single paper when you're doing practice, so like transcription is one that's really common. Make sure that you know those in and out because it probably will show up on your exam. Another thing is just going to be about these knowing how to answer questions. So having a graph question probably will be on that. Make sure you can answer that because that can put your marks above the rest of them because most people are going to be getting those AO1 marks. So if you can get these AO2 marks, very, very good. And the practical will come up. So remember your core practicals, very, very important because that will come up. I think for me, it was like a 6 marker at the end. So make sure you're knowing those. And sometimes they can even put it in multiple steps of the question. So practicals can be quite high yield for paper 1 and 2. Now, for paper 3, completely different ball game. This is why they really focus on that synoptic thinking. So unfortunately, you're going to need to know all 8 topics pretty well so that you can kind of jump between the 8. However, what you can do to kind of put yourself ahead is that whole scientific article, read it. Know it inside and out because when you know it, you can kind of, what we used to do is annotate it. So we'd annotate it with the questions that we could expect to show up, and we'd know that topic in and out, because if it's, I think it's about 30 marks at the end, you can get very, very high on that if you're well prepared. So scientific article is something that's really, really good to do as well. You're going to get a 9 marker. It's going to be a tough question, but make sure that you're in your data interpretation bag, because that's one that's really common to come up, and definitely throughout the paper you're going to get data interpret. So make sure that in that bag you know what to do, and also just in terms of criticizing practicals as well. So like things like looking at, do they have error intervals? What was the sample size like? Is it representative? Did they follow over a long enough period of time? Things like that are going to be really, really good, that you can kind of extract a mark here, extract a mark to there. So make sure that you're doing those. And also, please, I can only implore of you, practice that synoptic thinking. Practice making concept maps and jumping in between different topics. So doing these questions and kind of realizing, okay, although I'm talking in the context of, say again, let me use this example, neurons, I know I need to focus a lot about the structure of a membrane in this question, and then link it back to the context. So a lot of this comes through practice, and that's the best I can say. So paper 1 and 2, a lot of it is maybe less of application and more, well, you saw in the mark breakdown, a lot of, that's why you get your most AO1 marks, where you're just kind of stating ideas or processes that you've learned. And then there is application as well that you need to be prepared for. However, your AO3 marks are mostly going to come in paper 3, so make sure that you're practicing those skills for that paper specifically. Okay, and we're coming towards calling it time on the video today, so I hope it's been really, really helpful. We have got quite similar videos, well, not similar, but ideas about how to answer questions in biology properly. I've gone into more detail in the videos. I'm going to probably link them in the description below, and we'll flash the thumbnails here. But we've done videos about how to answer different questions in biology, and also about how to answer 9 markers. So those should be really helpful in terms of preparing for this exam as well. So have a look at those. I know exams are coming up, so very, very important to get this exam technique down in biology. Otherwise, I hope this video has been really helpful, kind of giving you an overview about SNAB. What are the examiners really looking for, and what kind of things can you do to increase your chances of getting those A's, A stars? So, hope it's been helpful. If it has, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. We've just hit 1,000 subscribers, which is an amazing achievement, and thank you all so much for being there and supporting the channel. Any questions at all, SNAB Biology, any biology spec, please drop them in the comments below. I'm going to do my best to answer, especially knowing that your exams are so, so close. So, I'm really going to try to make sure I'm answering on time and everything like that. We've also got our Instagram and our TikTok, both at demola. Links are in the description below. We're posting a lot of things on there to help you prepare, get these little tips to prepare for exams as well. And finally, that is a wrap from me. So thank you so much for listening to the video today. Hope it's helped, and we'll catch you in the next one. Bye for now.